Hi, can you tell us a little bit about you and your space in particular?
Yeah, my name is Jeff Abbey Maldonado, and my studio is located in the APO building. I've been there 18 years now, so I've been participating for most of the open studios in its 10 years.
Wow, tell me a little bit about the APO as a whole and how you got to be involved with that space.
Just interesting story. As a student at Columbia College, I was studying under Maria Castillo.
Who's amazing.
Yeah,
I had a class under him as well.
Yeah, credited with creating the Mexican mural movement here in '68. And my last semester at Columbia, I was actually walking the halls, and there was a posting. It said, studio for rent, $100 a month, no live-ins, 10 to 15 minutes from the loop. I still see it now.
Yeah.
And I grabbed one and then grabbed all of them so nobody would call.
I got to remember that one.
Yeah, and basically ended up being at the APO and have been there ever since. And so it's artist workspace, throughout the years, there've been a lot of great artists who've had the opportunity to use that space, and I'm very fortunate to still be working there. It's almost like a second home. But this year I'll be showing some etchings and also some new paintings. Yeah.
So your background is in fine art and painting and obviously printmaking as well too.
Right. So throughout the years, or over the years, I've been involved with murals and paintings, large drawings, but have focused recently on etchings and just getting back to paintings. I think it's like it's been a good 5 years since I've actually picked up a paintbrush, but I'm back. Yeah,
You're back. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. So talk to me a little bit how you've seen art evolve back from what you're saying, 17 years ago since you first joined the space, up and down the 18th Street corridor.
Well, it's I've been coming to Pilsen since I was a kid, and still remember a lot of the murals, the historic murals that are now gone. And one of the things that struck me as a kid, being driven down 18th Street to pick up tortillas or menudos, was the way that they always told stories, and the way that the community was represented in the work, in the artwork, and growing up in Bridgeport, that was just something that was not my daily experience.
Sure.
And throughout the years, I've been fortunate enough to meet some of the artists who are still around, who have painted those historic murals. Just speaking with John Weber a minute ago. And I think what's happening now down 18th Street is, we see a lot of new type of work out there, some kind of experimental murals, so to speak, and we're doing some of that work as well. But I think it just expands the language, the visual language that we have on 18th Street. But I think there's something for all tastes, that's diversity.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you and a group of students were the ones that did the mural off of Paulina, correct?
Yes.
And specifically, it's a portrait. Tell me who that portrait is about.
Yes, that wall is dedicated to the innocent victims of gang violence, and the handsome young man in the center is my son, who was unfortunately taken from us 3 short years ago, and it was a way of looking at his life as a positive young artist, and having him inspire students now who are dealing with some of these same issues of safety in the community, and of the violence that's just erupting, not only in Pilsen but in other parts of the city. And so it was a way to speak out directly against what's been going on, and more than just a mural, I think it's a clear message from youth. It was designed by youth, painted by youth, but it's a clear message of I think just how tired people are.
I think And as a new Pilsenite, right? I didn't grow up here. I remember coming as a kid, and I do remember some pretty terrible events. Just even walking down up and down the street on 18th, and I guess what's always very interesting compared to about Pilsen artists and the community as a whole compared to any other artist community is that there's issues of race, issues of violence, issues of just so many other bits of oppression. And the part that really strikes me is the way that, yes, the movement's able to grow together, to organize back the way that it did in so many ways in LA, right? And in certain parts from Puerto Rican movements in New York as well. It really strikes me as this epicenter and you and some of the communities that you're involved with leading so much of that. How does that feel now in 2012, now that the community's changing and possibly even calming down?
Well, it's just it's something that needs to be done, and I don't like to think about it in terms of history or in a historical sense, but because it kind of takes away from the purpose of public art, which is if it lasts a year or 2 years or maybe possibly 3 years, I think the impact may last much longer.
Sure.
Let's talk about the first African American mural on the South Side, the Wall of Respect, which lasted 3 years, but is still being studied today. Is still, it still has an impact, and so public art has a role. It not necessarily may stick around, but as long as it does a job to maybe inspire someone else to come and pick up the paintbrush and be a part of the movement, it's sort of like a living history, I guess. And it's a healthy way to look at it. It's just like, where's the next wall? What's the next project?
Any thoughts on some of the recent murals that have been going up lately?
Definitely, definitely different kind of tastes out there. But that's the nature of public art. And I certainly do have my tastes. But I think for me, as an artist, and particularly nowadays, I really feel that a public work of art has to have some kind of social value to it. It has to have some kind of a positive message. It has to have some purpose for being out there.
Sure.
There's nothing wrong with beautifying the neighborhood, and that should be on the list of things to do. But given that there's so many issues that need attending to or need attention to,
sure,
it's almost as an instructional guide. Part of the reason why we painted the mural on Paulina was that we, because the community's in change now, we wanted to instruct people who are new to the community, and advise them on their responsibilities in living in this community. I mean, if you see people who are doing negative things, either game banging or drug dealing or what have you, it's your responsibility as a person in this neighborhood to call up 911, to talk to your neighbors, to formulate these plans of action for not only their own safety but for the community at large. I mean, it's always the innocent ones who end up taking the bullet. And for me now, it seems that my work has a little bit more purpose to it, and everything happens for a reason, and maybe sitting here talking to you is part of that purpose.
Sure. No, completely. No, and we really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your stories, and more importantly, teaching the younger generations. I think that's probably one of the best parts about art and art making and public art making, that it's very much a collaborative process. It's not a small canvas. It's it's
right.
a block.
And the art is just a vehicle.
Sure.
The art is just a vehicle for creating that change in young people, and they're looking for instructors, mentors, artists to work with. They're actively looking, and I think one of the great things about the artists in Pilsen is that many of them do teach, do work with youth, you know, in a sense giving back to the community, which is needed. I mean, you know, I've worked throughout the city, and and despite what's happened in our own community, with, you know, with my son being killed, you know, a half a block from my studio, is that there's still hope in this community for it to improve. And as a matter of fact, you know, after this tragedy happened, it was a community who actually kept my wife and I here. I mean, we were, you know, initial thoughts were, let's move on.
Sure.
You know, let's move on. But the community actually changed our minds and, you know, infused us with love, and, you know, yeah, it was just a lot of love.
That's awesome. That's so amazing. Thank you so much. Is there any place in particular people can find out more about you and your work?
Well, they can come visit me in my studio.
Okay.
Or look up JDF Peace Project. Do a Google search, and you know, my information's out there.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
This is Colibri Studio Gallery. We started this, oh my gosh, it's probably about 12 years ago, as an alternative space for artists to have an opportunity to show their artwork, and as well as a studio. And I started this with Roberto Ferreira, another artist in the community. We used to be partners. So now it's mostly my studio, and I do, once in a while, I do events. But this studio, I think, was a very incredible space as an example to the community, because it was before many of the current studios, galleries, or alternative spaces were around. So in the span of 14 years, the community has really changed, grown. There is a lot more spaces and people and artists, from music to art and theater, but mostly music and art. Because here we used to have the Fandango every month for 10 years. So that was like an amazing movement that was created really by Roberto Ferreira, with Tarima Son, who was the first group really after Sones de Mexico. No? So from Tarima Son, then we have many groups that came out: Fandanguero, Son del Viento, Los Chiquitos, and so on. So it's been an amazing journey being in this space.
Speak to me a little bit more about how the music has related to the work and influenced it back, and kind of that symbiotic relationship that's happening. Because it's fascinating that as a communal space, right? It's also during the day it might be, you know, an active space versus a party space at night. Yes.
The space just really transformed. You might see it like it is now, like it's a little messy, and it's an art studio, and with the easel out and the paints out, and then all of a sudden, you know, get ready for the Fandango, for example. And so we put everything away, we put the dividers, put everything back, put chairs, a stage, mics and speakers, and hey, we're ready for Fandango, you know? So the space is a multi-use space, and it just really is incredible blessing that we have.
Is some of your personal work influenced heavily by music?
Yeah, sometimes I have created while this music is going on.
Oh, okay.
And they're
Just
very
sneak out into the
musical and
corner.
very colorful. Yeah, it's on the table and just do my thing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So what year is this for Pilsen Open Studios? 11?
This is 10 years.
10, okay.
It's our 10th anniversary,
Wonderful.
and we're very happy that we have lasted this long. And it's all been organized by us, the artists. You saw Jeff Maldonado, he coordinated it for 4 years. The first year was by Hector Duarte and Linda Luton, who were the ones that kind of had the idea of getting us all involved as a group. And so here we are, 10 years afterwards. I've been doing the organization, the coordination for 5 years now. It's been a challenge because having to work with artists who we are not very organized sometimes. And
I know the feeling, so no worries. Yeah, no,
but
I
it's
suffer from the same.
a great
So
great
much.
journey. really.
So how many spaces in particular are this year? And how is that compared to last year?
Well, this year we have 45 spaces. Last year we had 42. The year before we had 56. It varied. 2 years ago we did something different, and we included some businesses, more businesses than we had before. But we decided to go back to the original idea of just mostly studios. We still accepted a couple of places this year. There are not studios, just to give the opportunity to some artists to participate. But the main focus is to show people our spaces, where we work, where we live, share the work, the art, the importance of our profession in life in general.
That's interesting that you say, so there's an application process to become, to be listed as the Pilsen Open Studios as well. How do you think that, what was the reasoning for opening it up and then maybe closing it back down, it seems like?
The reason to open it up, it was interesting because before we went only from Western to around Morgan Street.
Okay.
For 8 years we did that. For 7 years we did that. And then there were artists in the Holstead area where the buildings for Podmajersky are that were not part of the Podmajersky circle. The Podmajerskys don't participate with us because they have their own event. But we felt like it was not fair that the ones that were over there that were not with Podmajersky couldn't be with them or with us. So I had the idea of actually opening it up all the way there, and there was a lot of controversy. But there were a lot of artists on that side that wanted to participate and have been in the community for 30, 35, 40 years. So even if there were 2 or 3 or 4 people of those that wanted to be with us, it was very worth it to go all the way over there. And then along the way, between Morgan and Holstead, there were other artists that wanted to participate, like Jean Parisi and Lionel, and there's daughter that had they call it one grand spot, and they've been in the community for many years, and they were actually the creators of Pros Arts Studio. So for them not to be included, it was not fair.
Completely, yeah.
So, and Diana Solis's studio is very close to that. And like that, people like that that have contributed so much for the community. And that's what one of the big requirements is, that you live and work in Pilsen and that you contribute to the community in one way or another. Because we want to keep this community together, united, strong as an artist community. And the businesses are, at the same time, it's been interesting because within the last 10 years, the businesses are becoming more united. Us, the artists, I think we are more united now than we had been before. There had been some people that are not too happy about having gone all the way to Holstead, 1 or 2 people, because of their own ideas, and we respect that. But I think the majority, we try to always make decisions as a group and make it as fair as possible.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting because for a long time I am, and I still was, a part of the Chicago Art Department. I don't know if you've ever been in that space. And it is a Podmajersky space, and even across the street when we were there was a Podmajersky space. So, it's both the good and the bad that there is this kind of tension, right, between that particular block and then, what to most people is kind of like the west side of Pilsen or the more grassroots part of Pilsen. How do you feel about that distinction? Because, it is very much a different community, even though we all share the word Pilsen.
Well, what I say is that we are one. There is only one Pilsen. There is no East or West Pilsen. I don't see that difference.
That's interesting.
There is the main people over there that vote are Mexican Americans. So they should be part of the community, and they are part of the community, and there should not be a difference unless they decide to make a division and make it a different, officially make it East Pilsen and then this West Pilsen,
No, totally.
But right now it's only Pilsen.
Sure.
And they are making the division.
No, completely.
Not us.
Well, and it's definitely, it's very much a love love-hate relationship because not only many of the Padmajerski spaces are beautiful
Oh, they're
to their
gorgeous.
own right. They're gorgeous,
Yeah,
right? But at
very
the same
nice.
time, extremely restrictive and limiting, and it's almost to the point of just negative. So for that reason alone, even when I was seeking to move back into Pilsen, I said, no, let me move further this way a little bit because I really wanted to experience more of this kind of community, and I enjoy it. So it's interesting to hear that even within the artists, there's a lot of tension, right, of what makes kind of that true.
Well, I
Pilsen
think
community.
it's the principle. The fact that he or they,
Sure.
because it's not so much the father anymore, they ask for so much money for their rent. Now, a lot of the artists are moving to Bridgeport
Oh, completely.
or west.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Or west, and a lot of the spaces there are becoming empty.
Oh, yeah.
And I went last week. I drove by on Friday, second Friday, and it used to be an amazing event every second Friday. Tons of people, and there were just so few. And it was at 7 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening, and there were like very, very few people walking around. So less and less.
Yeah,
People are coming.
and it is because of the struggle that many of these places, we want to. So part of what was interesting with Chicago Art Department is that we had the gallery there. The gallery continues there, but when we were looking for a studio space, we even said, "Oh, let's go check out another area." Even the west kind of west side of the town. So yeah, it's definitely much a struggle, and as soon as you start losing one at a time, right, and they kind of start spreading out. But I think it is for the positive in the sense that these communities are becoming stronger, like you mentioned. Bridgeport is becoming much stronger, and you really start to feel
Very
that community.
rich.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Very rich what's happening in Bridgeport.
Wonderful.
It's really good.
So how do you see, what are some of your thoughts of Pilsen Open Studios in its 20th anniversary? How do you see it evolve?
What we're doing this year, coming up, we're going to be publishing a book
Okay. Wow.
to celebrate 10 years of Pilsen Open Studios. I like to call it 18th Street Pilsen Open Studios. That's really the name, but it's so much easier to say Pilsen Open Studios. So that we can honor all those people, all of us that have worked so hard, living and working here in the community, and also honoring the movement, the art movement, not only in the last 10 years, but in the last 40 years in Pilsen. So the book is going to be featuring mostly the people that live and work here and have participated with Pilsen Open Studios. There will be a small history about Pilsen Open Studios, a little bit about the movement in the last 40 years. Not too much writing, but just enough so that we can inform people. And a lot of images and information about the artists, because it has to be about the artists, and mentioning all the artists that have passed through here. There have been over 250 in the last 10 years. So it's been a lot of people that have come through.
So how is this book being produced? Who's editing? Are you leading the project? Or?
Yeah, yes.
It's scary, I can imagine.
It was my idea, and then I put it out there at the beginning of at the beginning of the summer in May, and people loved the idea, and so it's actually cooking right now. It's getting put together, and I hope that by Saturday I will have a sample of the book to show. The way we're producing it is we're going to be asking for a sponsorship. We got a really good quote from one of the local printers. So we'll see how that goes. There has been a big force behind all of this, and her name is Colby. But the idea of the book is to get us out there, not only in Chicago, but send the book to La Misión, ¿no? Allá en San Francisco, or el Museo del Barrio, or send it to the National Library and to the local library, and just show people what we're doing in the United States, and send it to Berlin, no, or to London, or to España, no. So just send it out there, and my idea is that we can go to art fairs as a group.
Wow. So
and get out there as a really solid group of artists who are working together and doing it on their own. No big sponsorship. That's why we try to keep things tight.
Wow. Wow, thank you
That's
so
kinda-
much. Thank you so much for taking the time in the space
Yes.
and for sharing some of your ideas. So, where can people find out more about Pilsen Open Studios, the dates, and
Hello.
you know?
PilsenOpenStudios.net is our website. And you can get the actual event is October 21st, Saturday, from 12 noon to 8 p.m. And Sunday, October 20, oh, wait, I'll say that again. October 20th,
20th and 21st.
Saturday, from 12 to 8 p.m. And October 21st, Sunday, from 12 noon to 6 p.m.
Okay.
And we also are having guided studio tours this year, which is something that we're trying new
Okay.
to some of the studios.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for taking
you.
the time. We'll talk
Thank
soon.
you, Arben. Thank you.
Mi nombre es Omar Valencia.
Omar Valencia, ¿cuánto llevas aquí en Pilsen?
En Pilsen tengo viviendo más o menos 8 años. Es el tiempo que he estado viviendo aquí en Pilsen.
¿Y dónde específicamente está tu espacio, tu galería?
Bueno, la galería se llama Ochalá y está ubicada en el 1653 al oeste de la 18 Street.
Y entonces, ¿desde cuándo fue que se empezó ese espacio? Porque es un como entre tienda, entre galería, entre diferentes multiespacio.
La idea original es, bueno, se inició en el año 2005, hace 7 años más o menos, poco más de 7 años. Y la idea original era una galería de arte espiritual. Y luego la vine fusionando con abrir un poco más el espectro para que fuera una galería más alternativa, para que los artistas que no tienen espacios como grandes galerías y museos pudiesen participar y tener su obra en un lugar que les diera la oportunidad de exhibirla. Pero también, además de eso, también pues, hay artistas reconocidos, como el artista que tengo este año para el Open Studio.
Sí, cuéntame un poquito del proceso de incluirse en el Open Studio y típicamente qué pones de exhibición y qué vas a hacer este año.
Bueno, mira, básicamente las exhibiciones son, yo tengo más o menos unas 5 o 6 exhibiciones durante todo el año. Y he estado involucrado en el Open Studio desde hace más o menos 7 años, casi desde el comienzo de la galería. Y este año está Diana Solís, que es una artista bastante reconocida aquí en el área y en el medio artístico. Es una artista mexicana de Ciudad de México, pero crecida y educada aquí.
¿Cómo te encontraste con Diana en específico para que hiciera la exhibición aquí? ¿Nada más por conocidos?
Bueno, Diana la conozco hace muchos años,
okay.
Desde el principio, y casi todos los años tenemos una exhibición juntos.
Qué bien, qué bien. Y cuéntame un poquito del proceso porque estás curando la exhibición, ¿are you curating it o la estás, cómo es que cómo te involucras en la exhibición aparte de seleccionar al artista?
Bueno, como yo hago una planeación anual, cada año hago una planeación, entonces trato de buscar los artistas un año antes de planificar las exhibiciones para poder tener un programa durante todo el año. Entonces, siempre busco artistas que hayan tenido exhibiciones durante el año, pero también alternándolos con nuevos artistas, y trato de seleccionar la obra con un lenguaje diferente, con una idea distinta de cada artista y cada proyecto. Pero Diana pues siempre tiene su propio trabajo y siempre está cambiando. Y este año el trabajo es un trabajo bastante interesante, nuevo también,
qué bien.
Completamente nuevo dentro de su proceso como artista.
Desde el 2005, ¿cómo has observado la evolución del arte aquí en Pilsen?
Bueno, ha sido bastante progresivo, se notan mucho los cambios. La gente se ve muy involucrada, se siente bien involucrada. A veces nos hace falta tiempo y espacio para poder recibir a todos los artistas. En mi caso, por ejemplo, mucha gente quiere participar, quieren que les ayude a promocionar su obra, su trabajo, pero a veces no hay espacio, no hay tiempo, porque todo está programado, ¿no? Pero
sí,
ha cambiado mucho, se nota el progreso y cada vez es más fuerte la comunidad artística en Pilsen.
¿Cuáles son algunas de tus metas en el próximo tiempo con Oxala y con tu espacio?
Bueno, mire, casualmente ahorita, en esta época, este es el último año que voy a estar bueno, por ahora voy a cerrar la galería prácticamente. Se cierra el 30 de noviembre. Pero la vuelvo a reiniciar en una nueva localidad, en un nuevo espacio.
Ah, qué bien.
Para mayo o abril del próximo año. Entonces, pero esta vez quiero traer arte de otras partes y enfocarme más en el arte latinoamericano. Entonces, este motivo de este cierre también es parte de un viaje que tengo que hacer a Colombia y quiero intercambiar artistas colombianos con artistas de aquí, de Estados Unidos, de México, latinoamericanos.
¿Y la nueva locación ya está dispuesta?
No.
Pero todavía...
No, es un proyecto, pero
okay.
Es un proyecto que se va a hacer.
Qué interesante, qué interesante.
Sí, porque hay que cambiar también, ¿no?
Pues bueno, algún tipo de, ¿cómo se dice? Advice que le puedas sugerir a la gente que va a visitar aquí para Pilsen Open Studios. ¿Algo en particular que te guste?
Bueno, pues les puedo sugerir que vengan a ver a Oxala,
obvio.
al 1653 West de la 18 Street. Y bueno, que recorran todos los estudios porque los artistas y el arte que tenemos es bastante diverso y bien interesante, cada cual tiene lo suyo. Y vale la pena que se tomen el tiempo los 2 días y visiten una parte el día sábado y luego el domingo vengan nuevamente y disfruten de este evento porque es un evento bastante importante en el arte, principalmente de Chicago.
Pues bueno, perfecto. Muchísimas gracias.
Con gusto.
Well, my name is John Pittman Weber, and I moved to Pilsen 6 years ago. With my wife, and but I've been sort of hanging out with some artist friends from Pilsen for about 40 years.
Wow.
And they finally persuaded us to move.
Where were you before?
Well, we were up in Lakeview and Albany Park and in Oak Park, and my wife and I had made an agreement that as I approached retirement, that we would lengthen my commute and shorten hers. She teaches down in Hammond at the Purdue Calumet. So by moving here, we shortened her commute a whole lot. So it was a very good move. I think we're both happy here.
Talk to me about some of that history and what it's been like. You know, the community seeing it change for such a long time.
Well, I hadn't been thinking about that very much. When we moved here, certainly we intended to participate with the arts community, and I was not ready to participate in Pilsen Open Studios the first fall because we moved during the summer. But since then, so this would be, I guess, my 5th year probably participating in, maybe my 6th, I'm not sure, participating in Pilsen Open Studios. And I've also, had some other small shows here. A lot of my career has been dedicated to public art. And so that was really the reason why I was connected with some of the Pilsen artists, because of the murals and my interest in the mural tradition, and in Mexico as a result of that. So, but I don't have any murals in Pilsen. My murals and my other public works, cement reliefs, mosaics, and so forth, are mostly on the near northwest side. In the East Humboldt Park area, some in West Humboldt Park. A few out in Austin, at the college where I taught until I retired, Elmhurst College.
Any specific one that you could recall that might be recognizable to our viewers? Or maybe even just one of your favorites.
Well, some of your viewers might be familiar with the 47th Street underpass at 47th and Lake Park. On the north side there's a long, 300-foot long mosaic mural
Wow.
that I co-led with Carolyn Elaine, one of my colleagues. I've also done murals in, outside of Chicago. What have been the changes in the, well, the big change I think is that when I first got to know the Pilsen area a little bit, the Spanish-speaking people who were here considered themselves either Mexican-American or Chicanos. And now, overwhelmingly, people simply consider themselves Mexican. And that has to do, actually, with the enormous immigration that happened, especially in the 80s and 90s. So that's changed the character of the Mexican-American community in the whole Chicago area.
Wow.
Because the majority now are either immigrants or the children of immigrants. Whereas probably the majority before, there were certainly people who were children or grandchildren of immigrants, but there were also a very substantial percentage who had come to Chicago from the Southwest and from Texas, from El Valle. So that's really not a strong presence anymore. So I see that as the major change. The neighborhood's beginning to gentrify noticeably at its northeast corner. But not where my studio is.
Where specifically is your space?
It's on Cermak.
It's off of, okay. Cermak and...
It's right between Pauline and Wood.
Okay.
Right across from Cermak Produce. But this year I'm going to be showing at Casa Estlan.
Okay.
Actually.
Wow. Yeah, so talk to me about some of the specific pieces and work that you're going to be showing, some themes maybe.
Well, I'm going to be showing only prints. I've been a printmaker since, for a long time. I suppose I would really be considered a painter, and like a great many people who do prints are primarily painters who do prints. So I'm not exactly a printmaker's printmaker. I've always been doing various different things, but I've always done woodcuts. Most recently, I've gone back to lino cut, but lithos, etchings. And so I've produced a lot of prints over the years, and of course, I'm able to sell them at much lower prices. And so I will have some things priced at $10, and others priced up to a couple hundred.
Yeah.
But most of the people who actually buy my art are not, let's say, top drawer collectors. They're mostly either teaching colleagues or people that are in similarly paid, let's say lower paid professionals, or fellow artists, or just people that I know from, that I've got to know in different neighborhoods. And so they're the people who know my art, and their budgets are limited.
Sure.
So that's one of the reasons for continuing to do printmaking.
So talk to me some about the themes and of your work, and how has that evolved from maybe the murals to what you're doing now that's in printing?
Well, the themes have always sort of gone back and forth, or the images at any rate have bounced back and forth between my studio work and my public work, and usually they'll first appear in a drawing, and then perhaps appear in a mural, a painting, and ultimately perhaps in a print. Sometimes the order will be different, and it will appear first in a mural, and then I'll, be doing a poster for the dedication, and then later it somehow will appear in a painting. Since graduate school, I've been interested in sort of indirect or broken or fragmentary narrations, where there's contrasting imagery, or imagery where it's not immediately evident that they're part of the same sequence, and it's up to the viewer to sort of put them together, and it's ideas that are sort of associated somehow in my mind, or that might be associated in the viewer's mind. Of course, when I'm doing public art, I do a great deal of consultation and a lot of listening, and so I'm trying to use elements that people in the immediate audience will recognize. But I'm still doing a kind of a broken narration, broken kind of storytelling. And in my own studio work, I've keep coming back to that, but in different forms over the years. So very often there's an element of reference in my studio work to current events or to some major problem that's that I'm thinking about. There's usually images that in some way relate to my own family. And then I'm very interested in plants, as kind of signifiers of place. So both tropical plants and native wildflowers here. And my garden is full of, my little tiny garden behind our building is full of wildflowers. But there's very often plants that appear in my artwork as well. And there may be objects, that might be a part of a fence, or a lock and chain, or a matchbook, or all kinds of various objects that are very sort of quotidian, that are very everyday, ordinary objects, as they used to say in 20 Questions, things you might find around the house or around the neighborhood. So there's this, they're put together in a way that I hope is evocative, and that touches people in some way, and in some cases that might be actually disturbing. So now, that's not my goal in the public work, to disturb people, but in my own studio work, I do want to, that it's not just decor, it's something to think about.
To challenge
Or
completely.
that if it's in your environment, I'm on your wall, I'm hoping that every once in a while you glance at it and see it in a different way than you saw it before. So it's not immediately evident, everything that's there. And that's true also in my public work, that I don't want people to be bored with it after they've seen it 10 times, because people in the neighborhood are going to be passing it
Completely.
by for years. And so I like to tuck in some connections that are not immediately evident, but that might emerge, that people might notice over time and say, now I see that there's something else there. Because actually I want people to feel very much like one of my colleagues that I've worked a lot with, and I talk about our work together as like home cooking. We wanted to have a kind of home cooking resonance that people feel very comfortable with it, but that it also, strikes certain chords with them of recognition, that they recognize parts of their own life in it.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
And in my studio work, I'm also trying for that, but I'm trying to also touch aspects of our society and our relationships that are possibly even painful or that are less than satisfactory. So it's less comfort food, but I hope that it's still intriguing.
Completely. So where can people find out more about your work? Is there online or just your studio?
I have a website.
Wonderful.
That's jpweberart.com. I'm also on Facebook as John Pittman Weber, and of course I'll be in Pilsen Open Studios.
Even better. To see the work in person and hopefully even
And
purchase
every
one
other
of your prints.
weekend, I'm in my studio across from Cermak Produce.
Wonderful.
So when you've finished buying your potatoes and onions, you can come and knock on the door, and if I'm there,
Oh wow.
be happy to talk to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the time.